So good day, everyone. My name is Mr. Chinonso, and I'm your biology instructor for today. So today we'll be looking at a very important topic in biology. This topic usually comes out in most of Jamb exam. So the topic for today is joints. When you hear the word joint, what comes into mind? Right? When you hear the word joint, what comes into mind? So in a simple term, we can say that a joint is a region or a junction where two bones are connected, or a location that brings about the attachment of two bones. That is what joint is all about. So a joint can be defined as the connection of two bones, or a region or a place where two bones are met, or where two bones are attached together. That is what we call a joint. Right? So any part of the body, or any part in animal, or any part in human where two bones are attached together, that particular region is called a joint, regardless of where the place is. So in our human body, we have two major important, or two types of joints. And these joints are known as, one, we have immovable joints. And two, we have movable joints. So when we talk about immovable joints, these are joints that are not moved at all. This is a place where two bones meet. However, they can't move or they can't rotate to any degrees at all. And that's why they are called immovable joints. That simply means that although there's an attachment of two bones, right, but they cannot move. And that's why they are referred to as immovable joints. What exactly is the example of this immovable joint? Example is the suture joint. And the suture joint is located where? It's located on the head, right? If we look at the head, the cranium, we realize that we have various small bones attached together at the cranium. So small bones are attached together. They are sutured together. When we say the word suture, suture simply means when two things are gummed together, or they are attached together. They are small bones attached together, sutured together. However, they cannot move, they cannot rotate. The bones that are attached to our brain, that brings about the brain box, or that brings about the coverage or the covering of the brain, cannot move. So they are known as what? As the suture. They are sutured together. We have various lobes. The parental lobes, the occipital lobes. These lobes are attached together. These bones are attached together to form a lobe that forms a cranium that covers the brain, and protects the brain from mechanical injury or damages. So they are known as what? As the suture joints. And that is it for what? For the immovable joints. Joints that cannot move or that cannot rotate in the body of an organism or an animal. And the second one is the movable joints. When we talk about movable joints, these are joints that can rotate or that can move to either 180 degrees or 360 degrees in the body of an organism or an animal. So we have different types of movable joints. Example at one, we have the ball and socket joint. We have the hinge joint. We have the sliding joint. We have the pivot joint. So these joints are located in the body, and they are referred to as what? As movable joint. That simply means that these joints can move. They can rotate in the body of an organism. Number one is ball and socket joints. So the ball and socket joints are located at the elbow region. The bone here is called the humerus. So there's an attachment of the humerus to the socket inside the body of the scapular region. So this attachment is called the ball and the socket joint. So if you look at your shoulder, the shoulder region, right, the humerus, the upper part of the humerus, it's attached to the internal region, the gland of the internal region of the what? Of the scapular area. So that is the ball and the socket inside. It's called the ball and the socket joint, right? So you see, this is ball and socket joint, and it can move 360. You can see our hands can move 360. So it's a movable joint. You can move either this way or we move this way. So it's what? It's 360 degrees. So this is ball and socket joint located at the what? At the arm region. And the humerus then attached to the what? Attached to the scapular region of the body. So ball and socket joint is a good example of what? Of a movable joint. And the second one we'll look at for is the hinge joint. When we talk about hinge joint is a good example of a movable joint. However, it cannot move 360 degrees as opposed to the ball and socket joint. So it's located at the elbow region. So this is it. So the hinge joint is the joint between the humerus and the radius and ulna. So the two bones here at the lower part of the hand is called the radius and the ulna. So there's a connection between the radius and the ulna and the humerus. So this connection or this junction here, where these two bones here are attached to what? Are attached to the bones here, is called the what? The hinge joint. So you can see the hinge joint. It can only move this way. So it can't move round like the ball and socket joints, and it can go backwards also. So it can only move way via the biceps, towards the biceps. So it can only move this way. So it is called as what? As hinge joint. It's hinged, it is attached here, so it can only move this way, it can move this way. This is a good example of what? Of hinge joint, located at the what? At the elbow region. Most especially at the junction, should in case you meet this in your exam, at the junction or the interconnection between the humerus. The bone at the upper part of the body, at the upper arm, is called the humerus. The lower bone here is called the radius and the ulna. They are attached together. The radius and the ulna are attached together to the humerus. So the joint in between those two is called what? The hinge joint. So the next example we'll be looking at is the sliding and the gliding joint. The sliding and the gliding joint. So the sliding and the gliding joint is a good example of movable joints also located in the body of human, the skeletal system of human, right? They are bones that are found at the wrist of the hand. So you can see our wrist, it can glide and it can slide. So you can see the way it moves. So this is gliding and what? And the sliding joints. So also in our legs, in our foot, you can see glides and moves, glides and move and slides. So this is called what? It's called the sliding and the gliding joint. So this is a good example of what? Of a movable joint. So the next one we'll look at, and the final one, is the pivot joint. The pivot joint. So the pivot joint is also a joint that is located at the waist region. So it's a pivot joint. So this pivot joint is a movable joint that cannot move 360 degrees, but to an extent it moves to 180 degrees. So it's a pivot joint. So pivot joints can also be located at the knee region. So there's a connection between the longest bone, the femur in the body, and the lower bones of the body. So this is called, the joint there is called the pivot joint. Connects the upper bones, which is the longest bone in the body. Femur is called the longest bone in the body. So the interconnection between the femur and the lower legs here is called the pivot joint. So with this good example, we can tell the differences between the movable joint and the immovable joint. So we said movable joints are those joints that can move. We've defined what a joint is. We can say a joint is an attachment of two bones, a region where two bones are met, right? So we also say that we have immovable joints and we have movable joints. So immovable joints are those joints that cannot move. And a good example is what your suture joint is located at the upper part of the body, which is the brain, right? Where we have small pieces of bones attached to it. And then we have the attached together. Then we have the movable joints. And a good example of movable joints are the ball and socket joints, your hinge joints, your sliding and gliding joints at the wrist region. Then we have the pivot joints. These are good examples of movable joints. So the next thing we'll look out for is what we call a fluid. So this is a bone. This is also a bone. So this region where there's an attachment of this bone to this bone is what is referred to as joint. This is what a joint looks like. So where there's an attachment of here to here, it's what a joint looks like. So that's what we have here. Let's label it. Let's call this region a joint. Now, there's a fluid here, right? That is in between these two bones. This fluid is called the synovial fluid. Right? So, outside the fluid, there's what we call the synovial membrane. There's a membrane here. So, we call it the synovial membrane. So this fluid, right, plays a great role in the proper functioning of the joint. It ensures that these two joints, right, are not really touching each other. Because once the joints start touching each other, they create a problem, right? So what this fluid does is it serves as a cushioning, right? It prevents the wearing and tearing of the bones. Because if these two bones touches each other, it creates a problem. So what this fluid does is prevent tearing more like creates friction. So it prevents the wearing and tearing of this bone. That's the primary function of what? Of the synovial fluid. Then once the synovial fluid, for any reason, which is common among the elderly persons, right? Once the synovial fluid, as a result of age, happens, and then the synovial fluid dries up, then such individual will be battling what we call arthritis. This is a situation whereby the two bones are attached, are beginning to touch each other, little by little. There's what we call a tendon. So a tendon is responsible. It attaches when a bone attaches a bone to a bone. So tendon is responsible for attachment of bone. So in between them, we have what is called a tendon. So tendon helps in attaching. It's a layer that is slightly above the joints that ensure that these two bones are attached together, so that bones to themselves will not touch each other directly. Because if bone touches each other directly, then there will be a problem, right? There will be a problem with the body. Won't be able to walk well. Individual won't be able to walk well, and that's why when you see an elderly person, walking on the street and limping, it's as a result of the fact that the synovial fluid on their knees are dried up. This comes as a result of old age. So as such, the bone will start touching each other, and each time the bones start touching each other, then there is a problem with the body. So the synovial fluid is responsible for cushioning, to ensure that the wearing and tearing of the bones are are prevented, so there won't be a problem with the body. Then we have the synovial membrane. So membrane serves as a covering or as a protection. When I see the word membrane, like the cell membrane serves as a protection to the synovial fluid itself. So it protects the synovial fluid. It ensures that the synovial fluid is not entirely, dried up. That is the primary function of the synovial membrane. That's basically what it does. Then we have a cartilage also. The cartilage present around this region also helps in attachment of muscles to bone. So that's what it does. Cartilage helps in attaching the muscles to bones in the body of a living organism. So this is the summary of what a joint looks like. And I strongly believe that when you see a question under this topic, joints, you should be able to answer them. What have we discussed so far with this short period is the fact that joint is a region where two bones meet, or a place where there's an attachment of two bones is referred to as what? As a joint, right? Anywhere in any part of a human being or in an organism where two bones are attached together is referred to as what? As joints. So we said that we have two types of joints, two major important types of joints, and then which are the immovable joints and the movable joints. We said immovable joints are those joints that are not movable. That means they can't change position. They can't switch position. They can't move from one place to another due to the nature that are peculiar to them. And where are they found? They are found on the brain, and they are called the suture joints. So suture joints comes into play as a result of attachment of small bones together. So the brain comprises of small bones that are sutured, more like gummed together, right? So they are gummed together and they now form a brain box that protects the brain against mechanical injury. They also serve as a box for where the internal part of the brains are effectively and properly kept. So that's the primary function of what? Of immovable joint, or the suture joints. We now said that we now have the second one, the movable joints. And we said movable joints are those joints that can move either the 90 degrees, or they can move 180 degrees, they can move 360 degrees. And we said we have about 4 different types of movable joints. Number 1, we have the ball and socket joint. 2, we have the hinge joint. 3, we have the sliding and the gliding joint. And the last one, we have the pivot joint. Then we said the ball and socket joint, where is it located? The ball and socket joint is located at the arm region, upper arm region, between the humerus and the scapula. So the head, the glenoid, the head and the odontoid region are attached together at the upper part of the body. So at the upper part of the humerus, there's a head that is attached to the hollow inside the scapula. So that attachment is the ball. Attached inside the hollow is called a socket. It's just like when you fix a socket in a house, the socket we use, when you fix it inside the when you fix it inside the socket inside, whatever you fix inside is like the ball, right? And they fix inside what? Inside the socket region. So that is ball and socket. A good example of ball and socket joint located at what? At the humerus here, attached to the scapular region of the upper layer of the arm. Remember that this upper arm here is called the humerus. And it's called the humerus attached at the upper region. So that is it for the ball and the socket joint. Then we have the hinge joint. The hinge joint, like we said, the hinge joint can't rotate 360 degrees like the ball and socket joints. For hinge joints, the movement is limited. However, it is movable, but the movement is limited. So for hinge joints, we said that it's located at the elbow part, the elbow region. So you can see it is. So this is the hinge joint. It can move, It can't move further than that, further than this. So it moves towards the biceps. It can't move backward. So that is it for the hinge. So the elbow region is where the hinge joint is located. Then we have the sliding and the gliding joints. So the sliding and gliding joints are those joints that can slide and that can glide. They can slide, they can glide. So they are located at the what? At the wrist region. The wrist region. The wrist region. So they can move round, they can slide, they can glide, and they can slide. They can move like this, they can move like this. Then we have the pivot joint. The pivot joint is located down the knee. So we can see here, here, here. So that is it for the pivot joint. That is it for the movable joint. So when we now talk about joints, it's very important also to look at certain components that are inherent in the joint. And that's where we're talking about the tendon, we're talking about the synovial fluid, we're talking about synovial membrane, and of course, the function of those synovial fluid. So we talked about the attachment of bone to bone and the attachment of bones to muscles, and we talked about the function of what? Of the synovial fluid. We said synovial fluid is responsible for protecting what? Of protecting the joints. It prevents the wearing and tearing of the joint, because the two joints connect or touch each other. It creates a problem for the joint. It will bring pain to the body. And once this, start taking place in a human, either as a result of an accident or an injury that leads to the drainage of the synovial fluid, or as a result of old age, because as an individual ages, right, the cartilage that is located at this upper region will start wearing off. I don't know if if you have eaten a joint of a bone together, you see more like a white elastic substance at the upper part of a joint in a bone. That white substance you're looking at is actually the cartilage. So if you eat it off, if it wears off, then there will be a problem, right? So that means these two will be touching each other. And once they start touching each other, once it wears off, right, that means the bone will now absorb the synovial fluid, or they will dry up. And once they dry up, then there's a problem. Because the function of this stuff here, this cartilage here, is to prevent the absorption of the synovial fluid, right, by the bone. So it shield, the bone from absorbing the synovial fluid, or prevent them from drying up. But once they are off it, then there's a problem. There's a problem. That means the bone absorbs it, or it dries up by itself. But the moment it dries up, then it creates a problem. That means the bone will start touching each other. And once the bones start touching each other, then there'll be what? There'll be a problem. So this can only be revived once an individual goes for either surgery, where a new synovial fluid is being infused by a surgeon, or there'll be they call it a knee replacement. A surgery, as it's called, a knee replacement, where the knee will have to be replaced. And once the knee is being replaced, that means bones are some of the vital part of the body, or some of the parts of the body that are no more functions, will be replaced with a new one by a surgeon. This is the end of the topic for joints. So if you have any questions, or if there's anything you don't understand, please kindly drop it at the comment section, and we'll revert to that and we'll answer your questions in our next meeting. That is the end of the class 4, the joint. So we would also look at another topic, and then let's look at the heart, and let's look at how the heart generally function. Then under the topic heart, the heart is under circulatory system. So the heart is under circulatory system. So when you hear the word heart, what comes into mind? We are looking at our chest and our heart, where it is located, right? So the heart is a muscular organ, right? A heart is a muscular organ that is located at the center region of the chest. That is what the heart is. It's a muscular organ, right? Responsible for pumping of blood, and located at the center of the heart, of the chest cavity. So that is what the heart is all about. So the heart also, remember, it's a muscular organ. Should in case you see this anywhere, Also, the heart is divided into how many chambers? We have the 4 chambers.